Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and today I'm going to tell you why I didn't back the Isofarian Guard, despite being very interested in it, despite actually having a pledge locked in day one. I was all excited, I was very interested in the game, and yet by the time the end of the campaign came around, I backed out, and we'll get into that shortly. But before we do, let's talk about the Isofarian Guard, a quick overview. Let's talk about what this game is. The Isofarian Guard is a 1 to 2 player narrative experience with elements of gameplay and adventure and fighting and bag building and all that kind of stuff. Now, 1 to 2 players in a game is a fairly rare thing. In fact, I can't think of any other game other than perhaps Too Many Bones Undertow that has a 1 to 2 player count. It's not a very common, player count, although I'm sure I'll get in the comments down below all the millions of 1 to 2 player count games I forgot about. But anyways, the Isofarian Guard definitely does fit into that category. And I'm kind of happy with that. That was one of the things that pulled me into it, meaning I don't mind solo games. I like them, in fact, and I like cooperative games, and I like giant skirmish games, and I like Euros. I like a lot of different games. But a 1 to 2 player experience, this kind of sold me on the promise of a solo adventure, or perhaps an adventure I would go through with my wife, with a friend, figure out just the two of us, without having to figure out the mental gymnastics of, well, is this meant to be played with 2? Is it ideal with 4? Should we each be playing 2 characters each? How should we manage that? And that was a breath of fresh air, just because, while again, I'm sure I'll get in the comments down below all the ones I forgot about, it's certainly less common. Now, in this game is ultimately a narrative-driven experience. It's a story-based game with elements of gameplay that are going to flesh out the experience. And in the sense of that, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be exploring this world. You have the foreteller app, although you could also be reading directly from the game, meaning directly from the book. You don't have to have the foreteller app. And unlike in my Oathsworn video, where I kept saying it might be foreteller, but I wasn't sure, that one wasn't foreteller. This one definitely is foreteller. This is actually, I believe this was one of Foreteller's big pushes into this space. They've since done Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. They've been branching out and doing a lot of stuff, and their quality's top notch, and we'll come down to that shortly. But in this game, you're going to be exploring. Whenever there's a relevant encounter, you'll either listen or read through it, and then very often you'll be having encounters with enemies where you go through an element of figuring out your character, figuring out what their stats are, figuring out the enemy's stats, pulling chips from a bag to battle those characters, and factoring in your upgrades or equipment or the different things that flesh out your stats in some degree or another, and that's basically it. There's not a lot going on here, but more importantly, and now we're already slowly diving into why I didn't back it on a personal level, more importantly, the gameplay itself in this game did not seem rock solid. It didn't seem bad, to be very clear, and also I'm using the word seem. Seem is a very key word here. There are many times in the past where I have read a rule book. A great example is 1812. 1812 is a game where I read the rule book, and I thought, what is this experience? It doesn't look like there's anything happening here. It looks like an incredibly simplistic experience, but I love 1812. I love 1775, the sequel to 1812, which is in reverse order there, but either way. But sometimes looking at what mechanics seem to be, you could be wrong about. Sometimes things that look like they're lacking depth, once you actually bring it to the table, they have depth. And I want to be very clear about that, because the first part of why I didn't back this was a very personal judgment call as to the lack of heavy gameplay in this game. Now, while it was a very personal judgment call, to be clear, it was also definitely a judgment call that was being shared by others. It was being shared in the comments. It was shared by other content creators at the time, that it didn't seem like this was a very fleshed out gameplay experience. It looked like, not more than it looked like. In the campaign itself, they very specifically said this is a narrative experience where everything else is designed to flesh out that narrative experience. Now, I certainly don't mind narrative experiences. I certainly don't mind when it adds to a gameplay mechanically, but for me, mechanics are above all. I like story, but I like story when it's in story. I don't like story nearly as much when it's in board games, when it's in video game. I'm usually the person when I don't play Call of Duty anymore, but when I used to play Call of Duty, whenever you had a cutscene, I was like, come on, finish talking, soldier person, because I want to get to the part where I can have fun and shoot my gun and do whatever. Meaning I like action, and I like story, but I don't like them intermingled. I don't like to have my personal sequencing cut off while we read giant blocks of text, which is why I appreciate in games like Storm Thunder and games like Oathsworn, when they do have that narrative experience for those that want it, they also have smaller, paragraphs so you can read instead, so you aren't constantly, going back and forth between gameplay and story. Now, I'm open to the idea that I might actually enjoy the story. Like when I get Oathsworn, when I get Storm Thunder, I plan on starting by reading the story and seeing if it works for me. but I'm wary of it. I'm definitely wary of it, and that and combined with something like Isofarian Guard, where the gameplay seemed very basic. And again, seemed. I'm going to say that again. Just saying seemed. But the gameplay seemed very basic. A lot of the elements of what you could add to your character, how you could develop your skill tree, just really seemed to be the most basic of decent game mechanics pasted onto an incredibly rich narrative experience. Many of the things in the game were just just minor stat upgrades. They were things like, just increasing how many shields you have, increasing how many swords you have, increasing basic stats. There seemed to be very little in this game that was clever, so much as just more. Meaning, oh great, we're upgrading our skill tree, we'll unlock another shield, we'll unlock another heart, we'll unlock another cube. Not so much things like, okay great, I now have the ability to execute this thing where I move 2 tiles and stab 2 characters in the back, something like that. It wasn't clever, it was more. And to be fair, by the way, Massive Darkness, a game that I actually enjoy and I'm very much looking forward to Massive Darkness 2, that was my biggest critique against Massive Darkness 2, that so many of the combat mechanics came down to just tracking stats, tracking which dice to roll, how many dice to roll, and very often it didn't feel like you were being clever so much as just doing more or tracking statistics. I'm not so into tracking statistics. I am into feeling like I can do something cool. Lemon Bones is a good example where I feel I can do something with my characters which is more than just a stat. Sure, I might roll slightly higher on a die when I upgrade my character, but I'll also have an ability that lets me jump from one port of the side of the ship to the other and then pull your character close to me before destroying a minion. Things like that are more fun to me. I like clever upgrades. Too Many Bones is a great example of that's a game that every character has an upgrade tree that is so in-depth it's almost its own game by itself. Not to compare Isofarian Guard to that's not the standard I necessarily hold, but Isofarian Guard, nothing about the character progression intrigued me. Nothing about the combat intrigued me. This is a game in which the story heavily intrigued me. In fact, we're going to take a break here for a second because I'm going to put on my headphones just because they have some of the most incredibly well done. Here, listen along with me and we'll go through this. This is the Foreteller app. We have this. I'm just going to put this on so I can listen with you guys.
Pavel and Yana are glowing. You blink your eyes, but nothing changes. They just stand there, glowing.
Stonebound.
The words form in your mind. You immediately...
See, that's almost singing. Almost. I kind of started doing this thingamajiggy, but it's not singing. It doesn't count. In any case, this is the Foreteller app. This is a sequence. This is a 5-minute sequence. They have a few more. I will link to this in the video. They capture me. They really do. I am so intrigued by everything that was happening there, and I want to listen to the whole thing. In fact, what I plan on doing when this game comes out, despite not backing it, I plan on looking at the Foreteller app for this game and trying to see if I can experience the story of the Isofarian Guard without playing the game. I would love to listen to that on the way to work, on the way to a drive to my family. I would love to listen to that literally just in bed every night, just before I go to bed, 5 minutes per chapter or something like that. I love it just seems incredibly well done. Sadly, I'm just not interested in the gameplay around it, because for me, mechanics in games are key, and my judgment call of this game, and it is just a judgment call, was that it seemed to be a simple game driving an incredibly rich narrative experience. And that's just not something I'm interested in personally. Separately from that, and this is a factor, this is brought out by, this is by Sky Kingdom Games, and Sky Kingdom Games really has one other game under their belt, and that is the Stonebound Saga. And the Stonebound Saga is a game that is rated decently. It's a 7.6 on BoardGameGeek, but it has no real traction, it has no real audience for that game, and it's not a game that in any way holds its value. More than that, there were critiques and complaints about how much the game cost compared to the production quality of what people got after, and that's something they did try to remedy when they put out their second Kickstarter, Visions of Telios. So I don't know if they actually did or didn't remedy it in the end. But this was a game that very much did not hold its value, did not have a huge fan base. If you go on BoardGameGeek, there's like 22 people wanting this game. That's not a good sign for resale value. And granted, and by the way, before we get to that, also they just announced in one of their updates for the Isofarian Guard, they announced that the Stonebound Saga is coming out with a Lux Edition, so this will be their next Kickstarter at some point, to be announced exactly when. Which is an interesting choice because it wasn't that successful, comparatively speaking, although I guess you don't have to redesign a whole game, so it's cheaper in that sense, and I'm sure there will be a market to a degree, but I am very skeptical of the resale value of the Isofarian Guard. The pledge levels in this game, let's pull down the pledge levels. The pledge levels in this game, we started with the $79 Isofarian Guard basic level, We have the $94 Isofarian Guard plus foreteller app, and we have the $109, which gives you the foreteller app, the playmat, all unlocked stretch goals, the narration, the digital copy of the Isofarian Guard soundtrack. It gives you a bunch of extras in addition to that foreteller app. And that's not a bad price point depending on what you're comparing it to. But the question is, what will be the resale value of this game after? If you don't like it, will it hold its value? And I'm skeptical. It might. It could be. This is definitely a huge step up from Stonebound Saga, so it does have that going in that for it. It's like it is a huge step up. At the same time, Stonebound Saga was a pretty big step down compared to when you're looking at games that hold their value, and that definitely makes me skeptical. Combine that with what looks to be weak gameplay, and this might not be the... I'm worried that there will be too many people doing what I want to do, being thrilled by the story, and literally just paying the $10-15 for the app to just experience the story and forget about the game itself. I am very worried about that being a real thing, and so that is ultimately why I didn't back this game in the end. It's why I canceled my pledge. I was pulled in by the initial promise of what it did. I was incredibly pulled in by the narration and the app, and it just feels like a good story, and it's really well done. But the gameplay to me did not pull me in, and combined with their previous Kickstarters and previous Kickstarter, well, technically it's 2 Kickstarters, 1 game, 2 Kickstarters, combined with their previous, market experience, combined with what they have previously released and how the market judged that, I am worried that this will be a game that will hold its value. And that is why I dropped my pledge. It could be a great game. It very much could be. And this is a good time to talk about the fact that there is a late pledge. I'll mention that in the video at the beginning and in the title, so in case anyone doesn't make it here, they'll know. But there is a late pledge for this game, so you can still back this game. Same price as the Kickstarter, no upgraded cost, $79, $94, $109. It looks like there are 79 days left to back this pledge. By the time you're watching this, 77 or something like that. But anyways, it is available. And it might be a game that pulls you in. If you like the story and you want simple gameplay, if you're looking for something like this game promises to augment the story that is being delivered, this might just be a game for you. If you are someone like myself who values gameplay above all and the story is secondary, then I'd be a little wary. Dive through this, read through the Kickstarter, read through the updates, see if you are seeing the same thing I am, if you are scared off in the same way I was, because I could be wrong. They definitely, especially make sure to read those updates. There are things they did throughout the campaign that seem to potentially be responding to the pushback from people worried about how heavy it was. And those things may, in fact, upgrade the game to a degree. And I know recently they put out another update that they're releasing 50% more content, which probably will affect, their times when it's going to be hitting your shelves. But they announced they'll be putting out 50% more content in the app and the story, because they just needed to have that much more to fully encompass the story they wanted to tell, which is great. That's more content. But again, what are you backing this game for? If you're backing it for the story, I think it might be a great fit for you. If you're backing it for the gameplay, look into it. See if it's something that looks like it's your speed or not. It may or may not be. That's really a decision you have to make for yourself. And in terms of the safe back, I don't think it is. To be clear, that doesn't mean it's a game that will not sell for however much down the road. It just means that all the signs pointing to it do not make me in any way confident that this is a safe back. And that, again, leaves the decision up to you. That's basically it. I am Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. The Isofarian Guard is a game that pulls me in with its promise. It's a game that I backed day one. It's a game that I walked away from before the campaign ended. But I still might just buy that foreteller app if I can actually go through the story. I would happily pay $10-15 just for the story based on the sheer level of quality 5 minutes is giving me in this audio. And that's it. I am Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. You can like and subscribe down below. Comment, did you back this game? Did you not? Is there something I'm missing? Did you see the same stuff and you agree but you're interested? Do you not really agree? Do you think that I missed 3 updates where they talked about the level of depth they added to the game? I read most of the updates, not all of them, but I read most of them. Let me know in the comments down below. I am always interested, and of course anything relevant I'll pin to the top or put a comment or something to make sure people can see it. Until next time, I am Alex, and have a good one.